no public comment. Visitors, got nothing. So consent agenda. Everybody get a chance to read through the meeting minutes and the work session minutes. Did anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, any of that? We have a motion to approve.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Go by roll call.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
and that is unanimous.
Public hearings, none. Old business. We got the estimates for the dog park and ADA playground equipment. That's in everyone's packets. Ron, I'm sure you probably want to speak to this one.
Yeah, and I believe it was at the State of the City or the end of the State of the City. I had listed a number of projects that we could look at for the 2021-22 budget year. And council said, hey, here's a couple of projects that are on your list that are probably pretty easy to do. Could we just do those? And so we went and got some estimates together. And basically I set a budget up for $20,000 for both projects. I'm thinking about 12 to 15,000 for the dog park, which would include the fencing. It would include a separate area for unloading off leash inside the fenced area, a little bit of landscaping around it just so that it, looks nice in the park. And then a water fountain for both. We get a dog fountain, but I think it's both tall and short, so you can do dogs and people. We wouldn't put that right where the where the dog park is. We'd put it, closer to the baseball fields where we've got existing water lines. But people will take their dogs over there and water them. So normally I would have gotten, we did try to get multiple bids for the fencing. We put out a lot of contact, but in the midst of everything that was going on, I think people just were diverted to other things. So our bid for the fencing is a little over $9,000. And the reason why I'm bringing this for you for approval tonight as just a budgeted item is the price of steel's fluctuating. And so when we get these bids, they're only good for 10 days. As a matter of fact, they didn't really want to give it to me good for 10 days, but I said I got to have enough time to at least take it to council. So if you want to move forward with both these projects, the dog park, obviously, as soon as the weather gets a little nicer, we'll get the fountain and stuff in. The fencing will go in beforehand because we basically got to commit to that and buy the steel. So we can install it a little bit later, but we got to buy the fencing. But those are projects that we could do both those projects before spring without a problem. The wheelchair swing, we're looking at a single swing. The only difficulty with those, based on talking to our insurance company and the swing providers, is they recommend that you chain them at night because they're a swinging platform, and apparently they give way to injuries if kids are out playing on them and they're not really supposed to be utilizing them in a way other than as a wheelchair swing. And those aren't really super expensive. Our budget for that's under about $5,000 or so. The swing itself is about $2,800, and then we have to have some hardscape in the installation. So those are very doable projects. We put $20,000 on the budget. If council approves it, we would just set the budget for $20,000, and we'll come back to council with a budget amendment. So we'll move some money out of our contingency line item into our special projects fund or our capital project fund in the general fund. Now council could wait. We could wait and do these again and rebid them closer to warmer weather. But if you want us to get these on our list and try to get them done before spring, now would be the time to approve it. Any questions?
Have we priced out how much it would be just if we ran, a spigot inside the fencing there, just so that people don't have to take their dogs all the way out to get them water and bring them back in? If we just threw a single spigot in there?
Well, I mean, I was looking at an approved fountain, a watering fountain. I mean, we could run it over to there, but honestly, it's cost prohibitive. We're not talking about that much of a distance from where this is going to be versus that. And where we were thinking about putting it, anybody can use it in the park. So if you put it just over at the dog park, then it's kind of exclusive to the dog park. And there's people that are going to walk their dogs on leash. And there's people that are going to, be at the park doing other things. So I don't know that it's fine. We can move it wherever you want. There's some cost to getting water over there, but we would do the work ourselves. So.
I mean, we can do both. We can have a fountain that's out and just have a single spigot that's I see it as a hassle if I take my dogs over there that I have to then put them back on leash, take them out to get them some water, take them back in, take them off leash, let them run, go do their thing again.
Yeah. I don't know that we want just an accessible spigot, but I can talk to Public Works about that. I think our spigots have to be secure. People turn them on and just let them run. So like the fountain is automated, it's motion sensor, I think.
I mean, if we can get a price on just throwing something in there, I feel like that's just going to make things a lot simpler.
I'll look into it. I mean, it could be that we could get that done under the same budget. I've added a little extra between the two, so.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, I'm fine with it.
And it's much bigger than we had talked. I mean, we kind of talked earlier, we were talking about a 5,000 square foot area. Now that we're a little more serious about it and picked out an area that to approve to put it in there, it's closer to 9,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a 90 by 100 run.
Yeah.
And then there'd be a gate that would go into a smaller fenced area that's like a 10 by 10. And then there's another gate. And then that way people can walk their dogs in and out and get the leash on them before they're exposed to traffic or cars or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, do you want us to do a vote on it, Ron, or just give you the north-south?
Yeah, I mean, if you can just do a motion, there's a motion down there that just says move to approve dog park and wheelchair swing project with a budget not to exceed $20,000. That if that's the direction you want to go, that would be great.
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the dog park wheelchair swing budget project with a budget not to exceed 20,000.
We have a second.
I'll second that.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
and Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
And that is unanimous.
Yeah, so if we can do another, water access point or whatever within the budget, Ron, that'd be great. If not, I mean, maybe just price it out anyways. And if we need to do an amendment, making it just a little more or something, I'm fine with that too.
The main thing was getting the fence secured, the cost of the fence. So the rest of that, I can come back and talk to you, Mayor, or talk to council about the details.
Yeah. Updated council protocol manual. So I don't know, did the email that you sent me, did that go out to everyone, Ron, as far as the changes we discussed?
No, but they're included as red line versions inside. This was based on the discussion. I just wanted to make sure that the wordsmithing was okay with you. That's why I bounced it off you, Mayor, but I could go through the changes and talk to council real quick if you'd like.
I mean, if you feel the need to, this was all something that we had all discussed, so.
If council has any questions, basically the mayor and I kind of went back and forth on just a couple of word changes on those sections 9.2, 9.2, 10, 10.5, and I think it was 12. They were most of them were basic changes. The one of most substance was 9.2, which really had to do with the selection of members for committees and how that was worded. Now, we've just been carrying that wording forward, and I think that wording came from like an LOC handbook, sample handbook or something like that, but it really didn't align as well with our practice and or the charter, so we just wordsmithed it to align with the charter. I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
So to clarify that was the one about majority versus however it was previously worded with appointments.
Yep. It's
and
just,
then-
the council's authority is in the majority.
Uh-huh.
And so that's not a percentage. So it's not like a 2/3, 3/4 super majority. It's just the majority.
And
And
then
the mayor is an active voter. He is a member of the council in all matters except for those that he has a conflict.
12 was communication plan as far as the public information officer. So after we approve this, I guess we can make an agenda item on the next meeting as far as if the council wants to choose a different public information officer. And if not, then that'll just stick with me.
Yeah, and in the future, those will just come up at council president appointment. We'll just have a series of actions to do there.
Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns, any of that?
don't think so.
If not, do we have a motion on that one? You want a motion on that one, Ron, to approve it?
Yes, we need a motion.
Do you have a motion?
I move to approve the council guidelines and handbook with the approved changes that were made to it and revisions as presented by staff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous.
So moving on, we have that vision plan. I was reading through it, Ron. I'm still seeing the issue that I brought up last time. Which, I mean, it's not a huge ordeal. It's just I guess for me, it's keeping things the same. So when we go to page 4, and we've got that big list of names at the bottom.
Yeah.
As we're reading through it, we have some like Riley and Alyssa Anderson, and it is the and symbol. And then we have other ones when we get down there, Jared and Krista Ratke, and is written out. So just as a formatting thing, which I mean, it's nitpicking at this point, it's not a huge ordeal, but as a formatting thing, keep it to one or the other.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But other than that, I didn't see anything that screamed at me.
Was there anything, so we got the rest of them except for that one?
Let me
The
look
rest
at
of the
it.
formatting issues except for that one?
Yes, I believe, and I think Jared and Chris Ratke are the only ones where it was left like that.
Okay.
So if we just correct that one, I think we're probably good to go there.
And if there's a motion to approve, the motion could simply say as amended by discussion.
Did anybody else see any typos or have any issues with any of the vision plan? I mean, if not, we can go, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I saw anything. It looks like, because didn't we say that there were like duplicate names in there? And I don't think I see that.
Yeah. we'll remove
Initially
those.
there were, I think we got
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, if we have a motion on the table, I didn't see anything. We can go ahead and make that happen.
So what were we saying? To move to approve the vision statement as presented with the changes?
Well, as amended by discussion or whatever. I mean, it's one little typo thing.
Okay.
I don't know
Well,
if
I
I don't
move
think
to
anybody's going to sue
approve-
us over that.
I move to approve the vision statement as what are we saying?
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Go by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous.
Moving on. New business ice storm cleanup.
Yeah, and there's two items in front of you, but they'll probably blend together as part of our discussion, as well as just some discussion about the storm that we experienced in general. As you know, we were out of power for several days, but there were lots of damage from the storm, from the ice storm, along with the little bit of wind that we received, and many trees throughout the city were damaged. As a matter of fact, we lost lots of trees in our parks. We lost lots of trees at City Hall, street trees, as well as just flowering decorative trees. And we put together a little video, which I sent out to you guys to preview, but just because this is a public meeting, I thought Colleen could play the little 1 or 2 minute video that we put together. And then we'll go ahead and further the discussion about parks and plan moving forward. So when we put that together, right now, there is not a declared emergency from a national standpoint. We have a declaration from the state and a declaration from the county. When the county declares, then they file for a national declaration, and there's a threshold of damage that has to be met. And we're in that stage of gathering the collective damage from all the cities. So hopefully we'll meet that threshold to get a national declaration or recognition of our declaration, and then perhaps some of the costs associated with either removing or replacing some of these trees can be reimbursable from FEMA. Now, when you do get a FEMA reimbursement, there's very specific items that they'll include. I'm not sure if replacement trees will be included for things like the park trees. I know street trees have been included in the past, so I assume they would be here, but most of our damage is related to our park trees as far as replacement would be concerned. So one of the things that you need to do, because this is one of those types of emergencies, it's not an obvious declaration by FEMA, so it'll take a while for it to go through that process. In the meantime, we need to get this cleanup done, right? Because to some extent, a lot of it's a hazard. And so what we did with the video, and we've got maps and we've got photographic pictures, is we actually went out and took aerials of the park and identified each particular tree and took pictures of those trees. And that's kind of how we came up with that summation of the types, species, trees, and where they were located. And so we thought we'd throw this little video together as well. So the big thing for us is our staff was able to clean up the damage in Wildwood Park, Heiberger Park, which you saw in Heiberger Park. All of those trees basically just fell over, right? And they're a loss. It's just real difficult to plant a tree of that size when they topple over. But they've cleaned those up and they cleaned, I believe they've finished cleaning up Wildwood Park. So I believe those 3 parks have been cleaned up. The troublesome park, as you guys know, is Porter Boone, mainly because those trees, those ash trees are extremely tall. And it's fairly soppy in there right now still. And so we've opted just to close the park at this point until we can decide a direction to go on the trees. We had an arborist out and he's looked at all the trees and his opinion is 80 to 90% of the trees need to be removed. And that's a big policy decision by the council. So we weren't going to go in there and remove those. There are some trees that are just broken completely or halfway down or split down the middle. And obviously those can't be saved. There's a lot of trees where the tops are broken out and there's not a lot of foliage between the bottom and where that broken piece is. You know, we could go up there and try to trim those and leave those, but that really starts to increase the cost of the work that we would do to go in there and clean up. So there's a discussion that needs to happen on what do we try to do there. The main concern with the arborist was public safety. These ash trees that are in there have been diseased for a long time. And there's been extensive pruning and trimming on a lot of them. Some of them could survive that we would opt to take out. It's a possibility, but now you're weighing public risk to do you save the trees? So it really comes down to a policy question on how do we approach that park and the cleanup there. This time of the year, we're not in a hurry. I mean, there's no rush to necessarily open that park. We've got other parks that are available. But right now, I think our recommendation following the arborist discussion is to take out at least 80% of that timber tree there in Porter Boone Park. Yeah, if we do that, that's the least expensive way. If we do that, we will reforest down there. So we'll go out and get other trees that might be more suitable for that wet condition, you know, more firs and cedars and things of that nature. But that's going to dramatically change the look of that park. And so that's something we want to discuss. I will tell you that I'm talking to a lot of other cities. I only put a $15,000 budget here because that's what we had in our emergency line item in Fund 22. And we think we can get Porter Boone cleaned up, or at least mostly cleaned up for that price. But I will tell you that we're going to do a lot of that work ourselves. We did get help from Republic Services that are going to haul away the debris for free, anything that we put in the dumpsters. And also Recology will accept debris. So we've got debris removal handled as far as that's concerned. But then the question is, do you do something different? There's the cost to go in there and do select pruning to these trees is probably closer to the $50,000 to $60,000 range. And that would be a difficult place for us to find that money from. So, and especially it's unexpected. We've got other projects that are underway, but if that's council's decision, we'll find a way to make it happen.
So my questions would be, Ron, we go in, we yank a bunch of these trees out, right? Are we just gonna give them to Recology and be done with them? Or is this something where we can take a chainsaw to them and give the Boy Scouts some firewood or something, or save some of it for our, assuming everything with COVID resolves, for our movies in the park or whatever? I know there's been a couple of years that they did the camp out or whatever. And I mean, I'm just thinking of something besides just giving it to Recology to do away with it. Are we going to be retaining any of that?
Yeah, anything that's less than, anything that's greater than, I think, 10 inches, they don't take.
Okay.
And so that would be stockpiled back at Public Works.
Okay.
And then we've got wood there now for bonfires and things like that. We keep a fresh stock of dried wood around for that kind of stuff. And we're always getting wood.
If we just need to get rid of it, I'll take some of it.
Yeah. Well, if we decided that we wanted to do something else with the wood, it's a commodity, and based on the fact that we're going to try to do a FEMA reimbursement, maybe.
Yeah.
We would either need to advertise it, or we could give it to a nonprofit organization.
Mm-hmm.
So we could do one of those two things. In the past, we've taken out quite a few large trees, and we've just done a little public offering of, X dollars for, a truckload or a cord or whatever.
And then the next question I would have is, when it comes to replanting, are there any potential projects in the park that we have looked at that would have required us to remove some of those trees that we can knock out while we're yanking trees out anyway? Or is the plan just to go in there, replant, and be done with the situation?
No, I think what it would be, I think it would depend on if there was money that came from FEMA for that purpose. But my guess is, just trying to recoup our cost, it's probably a project that it was probably be an ongoing project. So as an example, we would go out there and we'd cut the trees down. Well, now you've got a bunch of stumps. We haven't factored any cost to remove all the stumps. Okay. And that would be a future project that we then have to decide how we're going to do that. Are we going to, get heavy equipment? Are we going to go in there and grind them down? What are we going to do with those? In that forested area, I don't know about grinding, because if you want to replant, there's so many stumps in there. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure the best way to approach that. So we'd have to come up with a way to reforest it. But my guess is what we would be doing is we would be planting these trees over time.
Okay.
And remember, we're going to go out. We're not going out and buying 30-foot trees that are going to replace 100-foot trees.
No.
We're going out and buying 10 or 12-foot trees. That will take a very long time to replace 100-foot trees. Some of the Leland cypress brands in a very wet condition will grow fast. Mm-hmm. That's a cedar species. Fir trees will usually grow fairly fast, although we have to put them on the areas that don't retain the water. And we'll probably do a mixture of those. And then some sort of flowering trees in there, I would think. But again, it would be a sprinkling of all of those species.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be an immediate, we're talking long-term recovery.
Yeah.
Those trees are, I don't know how tall those trees are, but I'm gonna guess that there's very few less than 60 feet in there. You know, so it's gonna take a long time for us to get massive trees back in the park.
Yeah.
One of the things I've told staff is even if we do approve this 80+% removal, that we need to be very diligent about trying to drive that number down as best as we can.
All right. Anybody else have any questions?
I do want to just make a quick comment. Ron, the guys have been doing a wonderful job in their cleanup so far. I'd love to acknowledge that with them. I really appreciate that. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, and not just that, I mean, and Ron and I had talked about it, you know, the public works guys showed up and they were a part of keeping that warming center open, which I think the response on that was great. I've got a couple of pictures that first night we had it open of Steve racked out on the floor in there and Nico on the floor sleeping, just because we were trying to keep it all open all night for people. So, I mean, kudos to everyone who was a part of that. You know, we had I believe there were a couple nights that we had a few families popping in and staying most of the night in there. That was something that really, I think the city staff in general, they were called upon and they showed up.
Yep. Yeah, and when you look at it, if you look at the budgeted, I put a budget together for Marion County Emergency Management, and I've got the disaster with tree replacement. And again, we're replacing large trees with small trees. So we're pricing them as small trees, not large trees, at somewhere around $120,000 to $130,000. We're only budgeting a $15,000 emergency line item in a request for a budget of a $15,000 emergency line item in the next action. There's cities that are entering contracts for $60,000, $80,000 to do storm cleanup right now. We're going to try to do as much of that as we can in-house, because we do have labor in-house that can do it. We've got a good workforce. We've got the equipment, and we're just looking for ways to mitigate that cost so that we can use it to bring stuff to the community that would be, you know, better used, like the dog park and swing and those types of things.
Yeah.
So, Ron, I know that you're kind of touching on some of the stuff that is in the report here, and talking about the community center and some of the community members that came down. I was talking to some of them, and they were expressing some concerns back there off of Mill Creek with all the tree limbs falling. And I know we're talking about cleaning up stuff in the parks. So looking at the waterways and the debris that's getting caught under the bridges and helping water back up everywhere.
Yeah. What we've done is you can't actually, you got to be real careful about removing debris out of the creek because Mill Creek is managed by a water association. And there's some specific rules to that. So we don't typically go into the creek, but we've notified those authorities of the down trees and things like that. And you got to be real careful, because if you've walked that creek area, you know, up by the trestle, there's a number of trees that have built up there. And then if you go down to Mill Creek Park and you just go past the park, there's a number of kind of a log jam type tree thing down there. And the problem with it is if it happens naturally, well, then it's, you know, it's just nature. But if we go in there, we move anything and that creates flooding onto an adjacent property, well, then that can cause liability issues. So people are very hesitant to just go out there and start plucking things or removing things out of the creek. But there is some trees that are, you know, on the sides of the banks that have fallen over into the creek. And really the only way, if they're on your property, to get them out of there is to cut them out and yank them, yard them out. And so those would be the ones that we would be removing.
Some community members that just live in the apartment complexes back see it, and they wanted to make sure that we knew, because they could just see a lot of the tree limbs and stuff that were falling, and saw that being a near future issue.
Absolutely. And we'll be talking about the tracks tomorrow night as part of our ID zone discussion, but there will be an expensive cleanup along that rail corridor before before there's any traffic happening there.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else?
So
Mayor?
Go ahead, Della.
I would just like to say, in regards to those ash trees, having dealt with them down on Beaver Creek, once they have damage, they start rotting and they go very quickly. So it's worth the money to clean them out now and just get rid of those, because they really don't retain anything if you leave them.
Yeah, it's just you from a policy standpoint, you've got a forest there in the park, and now you don't. Now you've just got stumps, and the image of that doesn't necessarily always sit well with the community. But you're right; they're very brittle trees, and a lot of them have rotted for years. I think the city struggled with that balance of trying to prune them and protect the public safety and welfare down there.
So I think the first motion we're looking for is a motion regarding the arborist plan to remove damaged trees. We have a motion.
I move to approve the arborist plan to remove damaged trees in Porter Boone Park, consisting of an estimated 80% of the current trees.
Do we have a
Seconded.
second? Vote by roll call.
All right. Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
We I feel like we missed someone. Did we get everybody?
Mhm.
Maybe I'm losing my mind. Sorry.
All right,
I'm spacing out here.
the next action item is council has an emergency reserve fund, which is separate than our 90-day balance policy or reserve balance policy. And that's Fund 22. And within that fund is a line item, and it's line item 611. And there's a little over $15,000 in there. We're asking council to go ahead and authorize the usage of that $15,000 towards cleanup. Once we get that spent, we think we can get most of Porter Boone under this plan cleaned up for that and everything hauled away. But obviously, if there's more to do, we'll come back to council. And this was budgeted, so there's no budget action required. But council has a resolution under this particular fund that no money can be spent without prior council authorization.
Do we have a motion? Does anybody want to talk about it?
I'm fine with it.
I move to approve the expenditure of $15,000 line item for the purposes of tree removal due to this storm and as presented by staff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Vote by roll call.
All right. Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Lee,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
And that is unanimous.
All right, and before we wrap up with Storm, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. just wanted to offer thanks to Mayor Clevenger, Councilmember Caceres, Councilmember Ecclestone. I'm not sure who all else may have come in. If I missed anybody there, let me know. But helping out with the warming shelter, getting that staffed and stood up so nobody was necessarily there by themselves. I think Nico and the mayor both helped actually get it all set up and get snacks there, and organize a food truck to come in for people that needed a hot meal. Really appreciate you guys doing that over the weekend. I was out of town, but I was closely coordinating with everybody as communication allowed, but it was difficult because of communication. So there's a lot of notes that we took to use this event as a training exercise, and largely it confirmed stuff that we'd already identified as weaknesses in our ability to respond to an event. But I think when you have an event like that affects so many people locally, it kind of re-energizes the effort. And I think that actually is what happened here. And so we've actually, we ordered some multi-port charging ports. We ordered a couple of those. We can charge 15 or 20 devices now at a time in the community center if we need to stand that back up again. We've got some supplies that we went ahead and got. So we've got some stuff ready-made, but we're going to work on a list of things and a list of maybe freeze-dried foods or packaged foods or things that have a long shelf life that we can keep in the event that there's an event. We can get through a period of time. But we do know that the three weaknesses in any event for us, as well as any city, is going to be communication, the ability to communicate, transportation, because this little event is an example. You couldn't access a lot of roads. But transportation and fuel, those three things are going to be really critical in our ability as a city to stand up services and try to help our community. But for the event that we had, I think the response, I think we were able to respond in kind to everybody. So thank you all for your effort and help under these conditions.
I think we definitely put together a pretty good after action review on that. Specifically, I would like to thank Kyle Goldstrom from Foodology. I had just posted something on I think it was even when I drove into Salem, because cell service and internet were out. I had posted something on the mayor page about trying to get hot food out there, and he immediately volunteered to bring the food truck out. And then Tanya Holgren from Lucky You Coffee, same thing. We mentioned hot meals, and she showed up. She had coffee stuff for people that were coming in. She was coming in the morning and in the evening, and actually using the kitchen in there to help cook some of the meals up, some of the stuff that she had prepared in her kitchen over at Lucky You. Those are people in our community that regularly show up when needed. So a huge shout out to them. And anytime we need something, they're always there, and it's greatly appreciated. But I am excited for the fact that we did use this as a pretty good learning opportunity. And I think the next time we have some sort of situation, I think our response is going to be that much better. And like you and I talked about, Ron, this is, twice in a 6-8 month period that we've had a pretty big emergency.
You mean despite the worldwide pandemic,
yes,
right?
Despite the pandemic, despite the apocalypse that we're already in. But yeah, this is something that I spoke at length with the chief. I spoke at length with Steve and Ron, and I think we've got some good corrections moving forward. We identified some deficiencies, some things that we can do better. So, hopefully next time something like this comes up, our response will be that much better than it was even this time. Your report, Ron, we have the Aumsville Historical Society annual report. No one from the Historical Society, you're doing it for them?
Well, I said I'd do it for them. They're, I don't know how well, I don't know if they even have a computer. They may, typically they do this report in person, but it's actually not been a bad year. They've been pretty much closed down due to COVID, but they have done some personal openings, for requested by people that wanted to come go through the museum. They've done that. And they're doing fairly well. Their membership is doing good, as I understand it. They've got a healthy bank balance. So it looks like their members, they've got 54 members currently. And so I think according to Ted, everything's going well. They continue to write their articles. They continue to interact with other societies around the area, and let them know about all the good history we have to offer out here. So they're doing good things. But I think like everybody else, they've been many years with a very active group that's put them in a position where they can weather, the year with an unusual amount of closure and no customers, and they've been fortunate. So they're actually in a good place, I think. But that's basically their report. They don't really, I don't think they talk about visitors because they really didn't have any. They've had a few, but it's been small. Their expenses have been low and their income has exceeded their expenses this year. So that's the best.
Slightly off topic, but since we're talking about the Historical Society, one of the things we talked about while using the community center as a warming shelter is, hopefully we get back in there sooner rather than later as far as our meetings go. But we talked about all of those class photos from the community center that are hanging up in there. I think we've got 1930 something up through 1950, offering those to the Historical Society, and then potentially using that same space on the wall to highlight some of the projects that the city government has engaged in over the past 10 20 years, stuff that's a little bit more recent, and then some of our projects that we're looking at over the next couple of years. Did I miss anything there, Ron? I think that's kind of the goal. Like we had talked about, that we have the kind of the draft plan for the new park property, print out a big copy of that and put it on the wall so that when we are back in there, we are discussing these items. We have seen the parks master plan and it's very easy for us to discuss, but I think there's a lot of community members that haven't seen that. So I think by providing those visual representations, it's going to help the community to better understand what we're talking about and probably increase their involvement as well, because we're not doing anything that's kind of speaking outside of anything that they're aware of.
Yeah, I think, one of the things is we're not flush with wall space in the community center. There's doors and windows and things of that nature all over the place, but we do have a few small areas, and the mayor identified one. And just when we were in there planning and spending all that time in there, you kind of start to absorb the atmosphere. And I think the idea was spurred from that. And really the consensus was we probably should be rotating these walls so they're not left the same, right? And so when people come in, and whether they're renting the community center or they're there for a meeting or they're there for an event, they get to experience information that way, just like the media that we use for website or social media. That wall space is media too. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I could see us putting together a storyboard for our vision plan. I think that would be a great thing to put on there. I think if we, and I know we will, at some point, we're going to get a capital master plan for the 23-acre park, because we're talking about that in part of our study sessions now. But sooner or later, we're going to get there. And I think that would be a great visual storyboard to go on there. And just telling some of the stories of things. Well, the storm story
Yeah,
would be a good story
absolutely.
to rotate in and out. And we can put these storyboards together, inexpensively, pictures and things like that, print them up, and put them up there in frames and move them around. So it's not like we're spending hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, but we could put nice visual representation of the stuff that we're doing and our plans. I don't think it's a bad idea. The question that I think the mayor's posing to the council is, does council have any problems with that? Because you are going to rotate some historical pictures and move those over to the museum, and maybe you'll move them back at some point. Maybe we'll display it differently or put a different, even a little display from the museum over there wouldn't be bad with some other history.
I think it's totally appropriate, honor the past, the history and stuff of Aumsville. I don't think any of us have a problem with it, but there's a lot of young families that are moving into town, and things that they're going to connect with are these big storms and all the trees breaking down, and having pictures of that and us rebuilding the parks and kind of keeping those memories around, and stuff that we're doing with building the buildings down in the park and the community centers and the corn festivals. And there's some families up there that I don't know any of them, but there's probably a lot of them that are still around. But there's a lot of community members that aren't going to identify and connect with that. So I think if we had other ways to make sure we're trying to connect with others in the community that are newer, it's just really going to bring a lot more unity and be great and healthy for everybody.
And I know council hasn't been in the community center in a while, but we actually have been working on it for your impending arrival at some point in the future, when we're actually able to go back in there.
Right.
But we did repaint all the walls in the community center. We put new blinds up, so we gave it kind of a fresh look. We added very large TV screens on 2 walls, so now there's 3 viewing screens. So anywhere in the room, if we're doing a presentation, somebody should be able to easily see it. And we did use our COVID money to put in some new sound equipment, which I think works really good. And it's all automatic, so we don't have to like monitor a board and move dials or any of that kind of stuff.
And the camera system as well.
A new digital camera, and it's movable, so we program it. It can zoom in on an individual council member. It can zoom in on the wide room. It can zoom in on the person speaking at the podium.
Well, even for example, if we are having a discussion about the new park property and we have, some pictures of what our ideas are or whatever, it can actually be preset prior to the meeting so that Ron or Colleen or whoever presses a button and it zooms over and focuses in on that map, so that while we're discussing it, people can see that pulled up on the screen. People that are watching the recording later on can see it, and it gives that visual representation of what we are discussing, which I like I said, I think that the more information we are giving to the community, the higher the buy-in is going to be from the community on some of these projects, and the higher the involvement is going to be.
Yeah. So anyway, we're working on that. If you guys are good with that, we'll keep working on that plan, and it's little projects that we can fit in between, disastrous events and just the normal work. The normal work.
New one every week. Yeah, I mean, that's probably not something we don't need a motion on or anything, but if anybody has any concerns, feel free to voice them either here or to Ron or myself directly. But that's kind of the plan moving forward with community center, I think. So back to your report, Ron. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off down a rabbit hole there.
Yeah, I didn't make a lengthy report because I'll be honest with you, I've been spending every extra moment either dealing with some emergency or preparing for one of the 2 meetings that we're having this week. And so the only thing that I would say in my report is just to echo on the budget committee appointments. One of the things I did last year was I invited the public to participate in a kind of a pre-budget meeting. So after the budget is put together and the budget committee gets that budget, I'll go ahead and do a Zoom meeting, and any members of the public that want to come call in and ask questions. I think that made our budget meeting run a little quicker and a little smoother last year. And hopefully it's a benefit to the community. And then any budget members that want to, budget members that want to come in and ask questions before the budget committee meeting can do that. And so I'll plan that again this year, just like I did last year. And then just a couple of things. I told council that, when we approved a couple of our ordinances, there were some that we did not touch because they weren't urgent and we thought we could get to those in time. But there were some that we really needed to get on the books because we were trying to implement for projects that you're seeing today. And one was the Development Ordinance. Since we've approved the Development Ordinance last June 8th, I believe it was, as we go through there, we found, as the mayor pointed out, some inconsistent formattings like we had in the vision plan. It's a 312-page document. So it's a lot. It's very wordy. there's no pictures, and so we've reformatted that, and we've made mostly Scribner type corrections, but there were a few things that got missed in there. We talked about most of those things, and I'll give you an example. We added to the downtown design standards. And we said we were going to make those the same as the ID zone. We weren't going to do a separate design standard for the ID zone. Well, there were 3 bullets that we put in the ID zone that did not get in the downtown business district, and they're things that we're implementing. So those are things that we wanted. And then there was one having to do with food trucks. We made a special provision for food trucks that don't require any development code. It doesn't trigger the development code. So we wanted to allow food trucks individually, or 3 or less, to be able to come into town, get a business license, get owner's permission to park somewhere, and do that under a limited scope, right? And so we said, instead of saying limited, we said the word unlimited. So it was just an error in transcribing it. Well, if it's unlimited, now they're permanent. Now it's a land use action. And by default, it does require development standards. So it's just little things like that. And we're only bringing it back to council. We're going to notice the LCD, and we're going to bring it back to council, mainly just because we don't want anybody to complain that we didn't go through that process. And while we're doing that, there are a couple of changes. So tomorrow night, you'll hear about one of the suggestions in the ID zone is to add, to allow residential apartments above the commercial development. What that does is that'll help lower one of the barriers about the cost of development. That was one of our ideas. So if council approves that, or they give us the nod to allow that, we will insert that. So just little things like that. There was one thing I wanted to ask the council. We did have a local company who installed an electrified fence, and our code did not allow that last year. I haven't contacted them. We've actually resolved that, and basically it's the fence is a monitoring fence now. And I don't like to make those changes because people violate the code. But if we're doing a code revision, I do like to ask council if there's any thought to, do you want me to look at implementing something like that, a change like that in the code where we might allow electrified fences, or do you feel strongly enough that maybe that's just not something we need? But I wanted to ask that before I approached the company or made any other changes to the code.
Well, so Based on the example that you're giving, I can say in that case, no, I don't think an electrified fence was warranted. Could it? I mean, are there times where maybe we might want to allow it? Sure, but there is a process for that. The biggest thing I would say is I am not a fan of businesses asking, then ignoring the city, our rules and code, and then asking for us to change it after the fact. That is not something I will ever support or be behind. Even if I think it would be beneficial, you can't just do whatever you want and then ask for forgiveness afterwards. But is it as long as we have a method in our process for variances or exceptions or anything along those lines, then I think we are doing our due diligence and allowing people to explore those options.
All right. I just don't want to miss anything and have to go back and rewrite it. So that's why I'm asking in advance, just to double check.
I mean, unless anybody else has anything to add, I think you're spot on, Ron. You're doing the right thing.
Okay. I see heads nodding, so I'm going to assume that that's in agreement. All right. All right. I think that's it. I think this should be a pretty easy amendment. And then tomorrow night, get good sleep tonight. We'll be up for our marathon tomorrow. We've got lots to talk about.
All right. So are we doing a double dose of council retreat, or are we just picking up where we left off?
No, we're doing a one council retreat meeting,
Okay.
and then it'll just tag another meeting on the backside.
If we were doing a double dose, I was going to have to run to the liquor store tomorrow. But if we're just doing the one, I guess we're okay.
Ron was working on his auctioneer skills.
Like a Jerry Lewis telethon kind of style,
Yeah,
48
absolutely.
hours sort of a thing.
Well,
Even Ron as an auctioneer still might take a hot minute. I'm just saying.
I don't know about auctioneer, but as the council knows, I can talk for 3 hours and not blink an eye.
We're aware.
I love the affirmation from Colleen. Positive affirmation.
Yeah.
I don't even know we're going to get the video up probably tomorrow or day after tomorrow. But if anybody sees it in the meantime, tomorrow is our council planning retreat. Obviously, those meetings are open to the public. However, it is not one where we're accepting public comment. It's just feel free to come and watch, bring some popcorn. Maybe there'll be some funny stuff. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Moving on, mayor and councilors reports. Anybody got anything? Anything for the good of the order? So I got confirmation on my next trip. I will be leaving March 3rd. I believe that is a Wednesday. So March 3rd, I am set to fly out. That gives me plenty of time to be available for our first meeting in March, which would be the 8th. So I don't anticipate having any issues there. Even if we're continuing the planning meetings or the retreat stuff, I should be good to go there. And then the 22nd as well. The next one would be April 5th. Well, no, not the 5th. It would be the 12th? Yeah. So I should not be missing any meetings outside of some sort of extenuating circumstances, but obviously if that occurs, I'll make sure that I'm in contact with everyone. But as of right now, March 3rd, I am set to fly back to the US on April 2nd. Depending on connecting flights and whatnot, that puts me back stateside somewhere between the evening of the 2nd and midday on the 4th, depending on whether they give me good flights or not. But if there is nothing else, if nobody has anything, I have 8:15. We can go ahead and adjourn the meeting.